Okay, so I think with that, we're 3 minutes past. Let's get going. We've got a lot to cover today. Excited. Thank you very much for all joining. Great to see such a large group. And especially as we think about the time of the year, it's August. It's sales planning time as it gets kicked off, especially if your calendar year or even offsets in February. So we're going to be talking about GTM planning to masterclass. So Stephanie and myself will introduce ourselves in a bit. But really what we're doing here is turning strategy into capacity, targets, quota, and execution. Really, how do we get the strategy of what we want to achieve into the hands of the sales team and start to execute on it, and what's the best way to do that? So with that, I will introduce ourselves. Stephanie, I'll let you go first.
Sure. I'm Stephanie Martin, head of RevOps Solutions here at Lative. And before this, I'd spent about 20 years leading revenue operations at cybersecurity companies and software companies of varying sizes and stages. So over that time, I have pretty much seen it all. I've been through more planning cycles than I care to count. And I've lived firsthand, through many mid-year replans as well. And just I know how difficult and time-consuming it all is to do in an organized and sophisticated way while balancing like all of the other stuff that we have going on at any given time. So I'm super excited about this masterclass today. Just sharing practical lessons that I've learned and that I continue to learn from the customers that we talk to every day, and just help you all establish your planning disciplines. I wish I'd had this earlier in my career. I was figuring it out on the fly with not a lot of help. So anyway, that's me.
Great. Well, thanks, Stephanie. And just introducing myself. Interesting enough, Stephanie was at McAfee when I was at WebSense, so we were competitors. We didn't know each
Yeah.
other back then, but I was running global ops for WebSense. So cybersecurity as well. So but then also mainly West Coast software companies. So Werner Schmidt founded Lative about 4 years ago with my co-founder Lauda. And prior to that, had been worked mainly in technology, mainly West Coast software companies, WebSense, Aruba Networks, Citrix. And then before we founded Sage, I'm sorry, founded Lative when just after I left Sage. So but the same as Stephanie, have lived this annual planning, replans, changing the entire sales organization from hunter farmers to hybrid, and then the next year going back to hunters and farmers because of, but there's just this constant changes, people coming and going. The stuff, data movements, buying acquisitions, you're growing organically and then suddenly you start to acquire companies. The stuff gets really complicated really fast. So, as Stephanie mentioned, I would have always loved a framework that we could work with, and then how we think about go-to-market planning, and just put it into a structure. And that's what we're going to cover off today. Okay, so Stephanie, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so I'll just tee up what you can expect to get out of this session today. At the risk of kind of going through some very obvious things, we're going to talk about why we plan and just why it's so important and the things that it touches. We're going to show you how to create a dynamic and continuous planning cycle. Everyone talks about that you should do this, but we're going to give you some practical ways to actually put this into practice, and give you a real roadmap for that. We're also going to show you how to pressure test targets and assumptions, because I think many of us know that sometimes we're handed a number that doesn't feel quite right, doesn't feel achievable. And so there's ways to actually get information together to kind of pressure test and decide whether that's it's going to work out or not, and where to identify and solve for any gaps that you find between what the company can actually produce and the targets that are being handed down from the leadership team. And then finally, just all of this is really about translating strategy into capacity, targets, quota, and execution, like how to take the company strategy and where the company wants to go and actually make that come to fruition. It's really hard to do, but using this framework, I think, makes it a little bit easier to start to plug in things to make that happen. So again, stating the obvious here, but the whole point of planning, and I think really planning is central to pretty much everything that we do in RevOps, because really all the things that we're doing throughout the year should be tying into your plan and the plan that's been launched out, and making sure that whatever operational improvements or initiatives and things that we're doing tie back to this. So we want to be planning so that we can actually measure and improve performance in a consistent way with a framework, that we allocate resources appropriately in investments. I've seen it a lot in my past. The hire to hit mentality. If we add more people, it will yield us more revenue. That may or may not be true. And we don't always have unlimited budgets for hiring. So there can be some trade-offs and things where, a good plan can help you allocate and balance resources the right way. Prioritizing effort and opportunities. This is huge, because there's never a shortage of things to do. And sometimes I think the most important skill you can have is how to prioritize things and put things into place in the right order, and according to the right timeline. So planning, really helps to make sense of all of that and put it into an organized timeline. Optimizing resources, talents, assets, figuring out, throughout the planning process, where do you have gaps? Where are there weaknesses? Where are there strengths? And how can we kind of combine those things, solve for the issues that are not going well, and, replicate some of the things that are going well. Managing uncertainty and risk. This is a huge piece of planning because there is so much risk. Sometimes we don't know how things are going to work out. We don't know if this strategy is going to work. And so a good plan and, for sure, some of the new technology that's out there today can really help you see a little bit further into the future. Pressure test, is this going to work or not? Refining the commercial model. Of course, this is just what we do in RevOps. We're always looking to do this, to put people into the right seats, to talk to the right customers, to target the right customers, and all of that. This all comes through in the planning process. And then finally, learning and improving. This is what we're all doing. So, this is all obvious stuff, but, and I want to make sure that I give credit to our friend Stephen Diorio, who came up with these bullet points as part of his content. He's a course instructor for the CRO Executive Education program at the University of Chicago, and he wrote the book on revenue operations. It's one of my favorite books, by the way. So kudos to Stephen for writing it. But anyway, I think this plays, what he's put out here and what he's teaching CROs, this is what RevOps can really do to help companies do all of these things. So first, I wanted to get into the things that, the competencies that you would need if you're going to start running a planning cycle this way, of what you would need to know or do, or the skills you should have in order to be successful. Early in my career, I was fortunate enough to be enrolled in a program for project management, like a professional development program. It was literally one of the best things I've ever done in my career, because it really helped me have a framework of how to manage the people and the timeline and the deliverables of, what we're doing here in RevOps. And we're constantly doing projects and programs. And planning is certainly one of those things. And we're going to give you a ton of tools on how to do this at the end. So we've got a lot of really cool stuff to help you with this. But brushing up skills on project and program management, if you don't already have that, is really essential, I think. Understanding revenue cycle. I think the bow tie concept is a great kind of visual representation of what revenue cycle is. So understanding how revenue moves from awareness all the way to, customer engagement and renewals and expansion is really, really central to this whole thing. I think most of us have a basis of knowledge in here, but it's certainly something to look into if you don't already have it. Um, Goes without saying these days, but AI fluency, like it's essential. I use it every day. I think most of us do. It's the only way to really be a force multiplier in this role of revenue operations that demands so much of us. And finding new and creative ways to use AI to help you accomplish things is really important. Um, Skills around executive alignment, comfortable talking to leadership people, board members. This is a key thing because you really need to be tightly aligned with executives in order to really make progress of putting a really good, solid planning process into place. A communication plan and communication skills is super important. Just letting people know what's going on, at what time, telling the right people what they need to know or consulting with the right people. We're going to give you a RACI chart at the end of this to help you kind of organize your communication and the stakeholders involved. Change management is, this is, again, I can't say enough of like change is just it's one of those things that's ubiquitous. It happens all the time, and helping companies move through change is so important because a lot of the planning process does involve changing things, and that can be, disruptive. It can be frustrating. It can be, a little unnerving for people. So helping, move through change is really important. And being an advocate of change and a champion of change is really key. And finally, doing all this with agility and speed is really one of the core skills I think that's important too, is just moving quickly, getting things done, being goal-oriented and just, getting through. There's so much work here to do. But doing it with agility and speed is really key. And I think there's tools and technology nowadays to help with this. Certainly AI can help with this, but having that in mind as part of it is really important.
Yeah, and Stephanie, just to add to that, I think honestly, that, they're all very super important, but please don't forget that communication and change management piece. Everyone has all changed differently and at different times. So it's a big part of the planning process, and then the executive alignment, so important. Being able to ensure that the execs are all aligned. And it's often you'll meet the CRO, you get a yes, then you meet the CFO, you get a yes, you get the CEO, and then when you get them all together, it's like, well, no, I didn't approve all that. So it's really important to please have those pieces. So yeah, Stephanie couldn't agree more on at each of these cores.
Yeah. And finally, this is a group effort. This is a team sport planning. It's cross-functional. You need really strong relationships with the go-to-market departments that you're working with. And if you're not working with these people already, you need to start, building those bridges, because a real successful go-to-market planning cycle and practice really involves stakeholders from all of these different groups: sales, marketing, customer success, anyone that's touching customers, finance, who is driving things from the budget and the cost standpoint, executive leadership, who are steering the ship, and certainly the IT and data teams, who are really sometimes the glue that's holding all of this together and providing us with the data and the infrastructure that we need. So, I think making sure that this is part of your overall planning process and bringing people in from these groups will help a lot.
Okay, so getting into the framework. So how do we organize ourselves effectively around a structure? So we got a corporate strategy. We've got guiding principles and corporate goals that's been set by the board or the C-suite that the company needs to achieve as a whole. There's people, process, and technologies that exist today. but continuously needs to improve. So I always got hit up. My CEO would come to me every month, every year and tell me, you're getting a 10% improvement and everything needs to stay the same. A 10% productivity increase is pretty hard to do as it is, but that's what would happen. So you have to have this continuous operational improvement. You have to get better. You should get better each year. The technologies get better, the new technologies come in, and the ever-evolving process, especially now with AI. AI does make us more efficient when it's used in the right ways and so forth. So really important to think of, and those two exist in the organizations today. You've got performance baselines that exist. Planning is happening today. If you've got a sales organization, you are doing planning. You've got a process. You've got a structure of how that operates today. So there's baselines of I'm hoping everyone's calculating their sales productivity. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Sales efficiency, return on investment. How's the marketing and pipeline funnel performing from leads to MQLs to SQLs to the funnel to the conversion rates that are needed for the pipeline. And how's the book of businesses performing? If someone's got, with your hunters or your farmers or whatever the roles might be, how are those books of business performing? How are those accounts performing, especially in the consumption space? Really important to understand that. So for us, that's our number one performance baselines. And then into two and three, what are the top-down targets that are being set by the organization? Generally comes from finance. Finance, I need you to hit 10 million or 50 million, whatever it might be, or even some of our customers, 2 or 3 billion. And if we need to set that number, how are we going to compare that to the bottoms-up operating data that's happening? So validating the capacity, the current productive capacity, and identifying any gaps that exist. Then leading into number four, scenarios. Okay, I understand my bottom-up capacity. I understand the top-down targets of what we need to achieve. So what are the different types of scenarios that we can build here to then get to those numbers and close the gap? So simulating other possible scenarios and yeah, as I mentioned, closing those gaps. So I've done my scenarios, and I'm going to pick a scenario that we're going to run with. That's the best. We've done, the executive alignment. We've now agreed this is what we want to go with. Okay, now we're going to set the plan. So let's agree the plan, and that's going to be our plan as we think about the new fiscal that's approaching. And if I've got that, then what are the outcomes that once I activate that plan that I'm going to track to? So how I'm going to actually track the results and the attainment to that plan. But we are very big about continuous planning and execution. This needs to happen in real time because things, as Stephanie, mentioned earlier, change is constant. It's always happening. Markets are shifting, countries are changing, sales teams are changing. There's just so much going on. Products are changing. AI is disrupting businesses, and what's the impact? So you're constantly having to adjust. So this needs to be a continuous planning process. And how we think about that is you have your performance baselines. That's feeding your bottom-up plan. The top down and the bottom up needs to be feeding your scenario. So you should be constantly running scenarios. Well, what happens if this happens, or we're seeing this, or our productivity's dropped, our capacity's dropped, we're behind on hiring, or actually productivity's up, we're growing really fast. Okay, do we put more fuel on the fire? Let's go to finance and ask for more heads or more dollars to spend on marketing to accelerate things. So constantly doing those scenarios, redoing the plan, updating the plan, and then tracking the performance out there. So it really is this continuous plan and a continuous planning process that we need to really be on top of. So how we think about that is like a chain of a bicycle or a timing belt of a car. Behind this is a sales engine that sits there. It needs to constantly move. So how the steps that we're going to run you through now is number one, what are those performance baselines, as you saw earlier? Two, how are we going to do the top-down inputs and what goes into those top-down inputs that you need to be thinking about? Three, what's the bottom-up operating data? So what do we mean by bottoms-up models? What is that? So we're going to talk to that in a bit. Simulations, getting into, as mentioned, scenarios and simulations, the plan, and then the plan performance and outcomes that will come. And again, just going around, it needs to go. If this breaks, if any part of this breaks, then the whole thing breaks. But what's really important about this graphic that we want to show you is that this plan and the plan and what it drives a much bigger, it drives the corporation and the corporate strategy. So we must never underestimate the impact of accurate planning on what that has on organizations. And that's why we want to highly emphasize that there really should be a lot of effort put behind it. If you haven't started planning, you should be absolutely starting to think about it now, because really July, August, we're into August. You really should be putting together the numbers, or at least the high level numbers of what next year could look like. Okay, so how does that translate into the information that you need when we start to think about performance baselines? We break this into 4 areas. Productivity, number one. Everyone should be calculating what is the sales productivity. And when we mean sales productivity, we mean what is the average revenue of a salesperson over a period of time. Because that's giving you an indication of what's the current performance, or what's the trailing productivity look like. So you understand what on average what a person can deliver, down to an FTE, full-time ramped equivalent. Looking at things like tenured productivity. If someone comes in March, what do we expect them to generate by the end of the year? So thinking about ramp times and what the impact is, that's all productivity. You can also then start to break productivity down into activities. So what does it take for those activities to then drive that sales productivity? But foundationally, the formula is sales productivity is the revenue divided by rep divided by time. So super important. If you're not calculating it, you should be. Efficiency. I know a lot of organizations, sometimes you go, hey, that's finance's problem. We now in 2026, it's RevOps' problem. We really should be driving efficient sales organizations, and therefore we should be looking at the return on investment. So that's looking at the cost with the productivity over time as well. So, and then getting into things like the funnel, right? What are the conversion rates of the pipeline? What does that look like? What's the sales times? What's the velocity? And just everyone I know calculates conversion rates a bit differently. But if we think about pipeline conversion rate, it's just what are the close won deals and what were the total opportunities and times that by 100. That's going to give you win rate. And once I've got those percentages, I want the conversion rate percentages, because then I can start to understand if this is the target we need to hit based on the conversion rates, what do my pipeline targets need to be? So we'll come to that in a bit. And then account management, consumption businesses, this is a big piece now. What is the account consumption? What are we driving with the existing accounts where we've got consumption models? What are the account targets we want to set for our large companies, or even all our customers? What do we expect them to generate next year? And then what is the book of business performance? If we look at the sales team, how does that book of business perform? So that's what we mean by performance baselines. So lots of pieces to think through, and Stephanie's put together a very nice a spreadsheet that you can take away to actually help you with the saying, okay, where am I red, where am I green, and do I have all of these? So we'll talk to that a bit later. Okay, getting into number 2, top-down inputs. So now we know our performance baselines, but what's coming down from finance, what's coming down from the board. So thinking about targets, okay, we always start there, but what's the targets? What's the bookings we need to achieve? What's the retention that we expect? What are those revenue goals? What are the pipeline goals? So based on what you saw earlier, if we know the conversion rates, we can start to get to some pipeline targets that we need to achieve. And then quotas. My favorite, I love and hate quotas. You need to have them, but really, we don't build plans based on quotas. We build plans based on productivity and capacity, and we'll talk to that in a bit. What's the revenue mix? Where do I expect my revenue to come from? From different product lines, segments of customers. What does that look like? Finance generally have some targets that we need to hit, because they've got to operate the plan. They've got to make sure there's enough money there for the business to operate. So there's no messing with those numbers, but so there's certain mixes of revenue of how they need to come in. Some of them have higher margins than others, and therefore it's important that those are delivered as expected for the team, that the sales organization does that. Resources. It's not all just about adding heads to drive productivity and capacity. Resources are accounts and the customers you're going after. Can we drive more ARR by larger customers? Or if we are a high velocity business and we have lots of customers, how do we get more of those, or maybe take some of those to a more product-led motion and have the assisted sales team focus on larger deals? Budgeting costs. We've got to sit within an envelope. There's only so much money that you can spend. on an organization. It's not like there's endless money. So how do you fit into that cost envelope to be able to hit the plan? Headcount and hiring, big piece on hiring. It's all well and good to say finance has given me 10 heads to hire or whatever it might be. But when do we hire those? A lot of the time, I'd get hit up saying, right, you can hire these heads. And I get told I can hire them in Q3 and Q4. And we've just built a plan assuming those heads are going to start in the first quarter. Heads hired in Q3 and Q4 are going to have very little impact on the number. So that's why it's really important, as Stephanie showed, this is a cross collaboration exercise. Finance should be your best partner on figuring out how you can make it work from being within the cost envelope and getting the headcount you need when you need it. Products and services. Can't stress this enough. You need to be aligned with your product leaders and understand what are they coming, what's the product going to deliver, and what can that do to help increase the average deal size within companies or buy new features or whatever it might be. So very important to have the product teams involved as well. Partners, the channel. What's the channel going to deliver? What's the channel partners going to do? What's the distributors expected both to the resellers or the alliances that you might have? So the channel partner pieces, what's coming in and how you're going to factor that into the model. And then, of course, technology and data. What have we got? What's our tech stack? Are we bringing in new systems and tools that are going to help speed up the process and means I don't have 5 clicks to do this, I've got 2 clicks to do it, or all the AI that's coming. Can the sales team spend more time selling now so that they can generate a bit more business? I do think there's always a limit of what can be done. But it's the tech stack plays a very important part to the plan that you want to roll out so that it can support it. And then assumptions. So that's why we've got to understand targets, resources, and then the assumptions. What's the attrition rate that we're going to run at? What's the ramp expectations? Ultimately, you want to actually calculate what your ramp times are, not just saying it's a 6-month ramp. Well, you need to know, is it 5 months? Is it 4 months? Is it 8 months? That has big impacts on your new hires as they come in. What's the seasonality? Of course, there's targets you need to hit throughout the year on percentages of when you expect that revenue to come in. Again, align with finance on this because it's really important so that finance can make sure that they can operate the plan in the best way. Segmentation of customers, org structure, roles, territories. So lots of pieces to think through when you think about your top-down inputs. Okay, so getting into number 3 now, bottom-up models. This is foundational, and a lot of organizations don't do this to the level that they should. It's very easy. It's easy to understand your performance. Number 1, your baseline. 2, get your top down. Lots to think about, of course. But 3, you've got to do your bottom-up models. So what is the current productive capacity of the sales team you've got today? And what we mean by that is what's the available selling capacity? Because right now there's a number of salespeople on the floor. What can they produce? So the formula here for sales capacity is headcount times productivity. So you've got the productivity calculation earlier. Now I want to times that by headcount or fully ramped equivalents that are or butts in seat, we used to call it. Who's on the floor right now and what are they producing on average? And we multiply that to now we can get to capacity or productive capacity. And that allows us to then start doing capacity projections. Time to think, okay, well, based on the sellers we got today, we know we can deliver 15 million or whatever it might be. So if we've got 4 or 5 more people coming, we've got some product updates, well, then maybe we could get to 18 million and there's ways to model all that. So really important to understand that. The other big piece takeaway here, fully ramped equivalents. Be very careful not to look at who is actually fully ramped because they produce at a different level. Also look at your tenured productivity data. A rep that's 1 year old produces at a different level to what a 2-year-old or 3-year-old salesperson produces. And that you need to factor those pieces in. So yes, this does get complicated. We wanted to make this simple for you. And hence why a lot of organizations don't calculate this the right way because it is complicated, but you really should be doing it. Pipeline capacity, understanding your conversion and win rates. That should be standard. We know, the jury is out there on what the actual correct formulas are to calculate it because everyone does it a bit differently. But understand the cycle times. Calculate your sales velocity. Just Google it. If you put sales velocity in formula, we're going to give you the spreadsheets at the end and gives you you should be calculating it. It's an important metric to be thinking about when you think about pipeline and the sales team. Lead creation projections. How many MQLs can we expect from marketing? And this is revenue operations now. This is sales operations and marketing operations and customer success operations all in one. So you really should be thinking about it end to end. And how many MQLs are going to turn into sales qualified leads that are going to start to turn into pipeline? And that starts to lead into the pipeline projections and targets. So, and then quota coverage, of course, getting to quotas. Again, third there, thinking about, okay, so what should be the targets for each role and how much quota do we expect to achieve? Please, I do beg you, sales capacity to quota ratios. What is the capacity of or productivity of the team right now? And what's the quotas they've got? That really should be a ratio. Then set, if the current average productivity of the new business team in North America is 400K per year, there's no point setting them 800 or K quotas or $1 million quotas. That's they're not going to achieve that. It just creates unhealthy sales organizations, and you're not going to hit your growth rates. So look at that carefully. Quota attainment, of course, and then quota over assignment. So what we mean by that is I've got a quota, and how do I start to over assign that throughout the org? Because there's a number you need to hit for finance. Then I've got my VPs or directors, and then sales team or sales managers, and then the sales reps. So what targets do I give each of those levels, and what's the over assignment percentage I'm going to set, so that you can ensure that you hit your numbers. So yeah, we've got a few blogs on that as well, on the best way to do it. So lots already. I'm sure your heads are spinning because we're only at number three. But the one, two, and three. Now we're starting to understand what's going on in the organization. We've taken that top-down plan. We're comparing it now with the bottom-up operating model, and now we're starting to understand the gaps. When I understand that, now I can start to think about how am I going to simulate things. Okay, so now I'm going to simulate thinking, okay, well, if I add extra headcount or take some headcount out, what happens? If I increase my sales productivity by 5%, what does that mean to the org? Or maybe it has to come down in certain areas. Strategic initiatives. Everyone's, I'm sure, hopefully, have got AI initiatives running. Okay, but what's that going to deliver in productivity lifts? I've got Claude's come in and it's going to, I hear in crazy stuff like 60% improvement. It's not going to deliver a 60% sales productivity improvement. It takes time. I'm sure it will in time, but it's not going to happen overnight. So be thoughtful about your strategic initiatives. Be realistic of how that will ramp, and or whatever they might be. Enablement actually is a big piece on strategic initiatives. How can we improve the onboarding programs? What value sell programs are we going to bring in? How are we going to elevate and get our sales organization to proficiency where they can drive a higher productivity? So that's a big piece, but strategic. Growth percentages year over year, always factor in your cost. I mean, we're big on return on investment. What is this plan actually going to deliver, and what's my ROI that I'm going to get? And always, think about attrition, because attrition can make or break a plan, if you don't get it right. Again, back to my point, don't create unhealthy sales organizations, because then all your top performers are going to leave, and it creates a gap, and it's difficult then to hit the numbers. Okay, so from four, heading into five, the plan. Okay, so now we've done our simulations, we've agreed it. You've been awesome speaking to doing executive alignment. Everyone agrees, hey, this is the plan we're going to hit. You got your CRO on board. Okay, now I've got that. I've set the targets. Everyone signed off on that. We've got the capacity plan based on when we're going to hire people. That's all signed off with finance. Headcount targets are therefore in there. We got the quota assigned. We know what the quotas are going to be. We got that rolled out. We got the pipeline targets because we know the conversion rates. Now we can give you I've got my pipeline targets of what I need to achieve each month, down to the individuals. And I've got my attrition targets set. So those are the core pieces. Again, each organization, you working in your own organization, these might be a bit different. We're just giving you the high level ones of what you should be thinking about. Consumption models are going to work a bit differently. Each org works a bit differently depending on what industry you're in as well. Okay, so now the plan's done. How do we then track this? So capacity utilized, the headcount deployed versus we said we're going to hire them. Where are we in that? Is that person on board, and are they starting to generate revenue, and as they ramp? Or maybe a big thing that happened to me, we'd have the hiring plan. It was all great. You'd go speak with HR and the recruitment team wasn't ready. They said, we didn't even know about this. And as soon as you hear that, you're 3 months behind on getting a person in the door. through interviews, through finally getting a candidate. They have to then give their notice. I know in the US it's only a couple of weeks, but in Europe it can be 30 days, 60 days sometimes. It takes some time to get that headcount in. So important to be aligned with HR, again, cross-functional teams. Quota attained, how we track into the attainment, how we quote into the quota deployed. It was always lovely that you start the year, you got your quota plan and everything's perfect. And then literally 2 days later, so you get an email from your CRO. Can you change these quotas? Can you reduce them? Or can you, I've agreed with, the head of, the VP for sales in Europe or North America, a 5% drop in quotas, and suddenly it's all blown up. So now you got to go change everything. So now I don't have enough quota deployed in some areas. My over assignment levels are wrong, and then I think a lot of you have probably got the pain and dealt with that a few times. Tracking target attained, of course, and then attrition actuals. Always watch that attrition because attrition tells you if you've got a healthy sales organization or not. Okay, so in summary, I know I've been talking a lot. It's a webinar. It's a bit weird just hearing my own voice. But you want to do planning right, that's how you do it. Is one, understand those performance baselines. How is the business performing today? You know the numbers, this is what to do, and get it into those categories that we showed you, the 4 categories. Top-down inputs. What does the business need to achieve? And understand those targets. Finance is your best friend. So please, if you're not friends with finance, make friends. And bottoms-up models. I know it's hard. We know it's hard. That's why we built Lative to make this easier. But you need to understand your productive capacity. So what can the sales team produce today based on the historical trends, and how can I model that into the future? Simulations and scenarios, constantly be doing that. The plan is the plan, but the plan is live. This isn't a plan or a spreadsheet of version 45 of your Excel spreadsheet that is now the plan's done and you go file it away. This is a live plan that exists. It's version 1, it's version 45, but that becomes 1, and everyone looks at this plan on a regular basis, how we actually track in actuals against it, on where we said what we do, what do we need to adjust. And that's driven from number 6, which is the plan performance outcomes. So what did we achieve versus the plan? Okay, so I'm going to take a break and hand over back to Stephanie.
So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed at all of this, like we see you, and we definitely can empathize. So we're going to give you some more tips and things to help you kind of work through this and put a lot of it into practice, if not all of it. So the first kind of step to launching this plan and getting, once you've kind of done all the steps leading up to the plan, you want to have I'll even back up, like before you even start planning, you want to set a timeline. You want to work out, at what point do you need to roll out quotas and targets and everything to the organization and work backwards from there. So if that's the case, we're going to need to have quotas done by X time. We're going to need to have, all of our top-down decisions, by this time, so that we have, time to build all the models and et cetera. So the timeline is super important, and managing to that timeline, having clear, milestones and things along the way is going to really help you stay organized and get the folks together that you're going to need to put all of this together. We're going to give you a list of milestones. So first things first, we're going to give you a planning calendar that you can use that kind of has all the milestones in it, or suggested milestones, common milestones that you might use. You can, of course, make a copy and edit it and make it your own, but we'll give you a format for that. And then, as you're going through everything that we've talked about and all those 6 different components, we have a planning readiness assessment kind of form that you can fill out, or not a form, but like a sheet as like a checklist, like go through it, figure out if you've got these things in place today, what you're going to need to put into place, and track your progress along the way. It'll really help you stay organized and figure out whether, you have weaknesses in some of these areas. And then as part of the communication plan and making sure that it's cross-functional and that you have all the right people together, we're going to give you a RACI chart, again, that you can update and make it your own based on who you have to work with in your organization. And use that as part of that initial planning setup of like, who is all going to be involved? What are they going to be responsible for? Who needs to be informed along the way? Who do I need to consult with on different things? And the RACI chart will really help you kind of break it down and think it through. So we're going to give you all those resources today, and hopefully it helps you feel a little bit less overwhelmed at all of this. So.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I'll just add to it. I mean, the resources are there for you to use, and you can reorder them, put in your own, milestones of what you need to
Yeah.
hit and so forth. They're a guide, but just really important. I can't stress enough that RACI chart. Planning, as you've seen, this is complicated. It's cross-functional. So you RevOps leaders, you lead. Most of you are going to be leading this. So, but you need to know who else in those cross-functional teams are going to be a point. And that's what makes a successful planning process by the end, and get your quotas out on time at the beginning of the year or the beginning of your fiscal.
Um, so I think that the job of revenue operations really centralizes around putting insurance around the achievement of the plan. And that everything that we then do as operators kind of all ties back to ensuring that the plan is going to come to fruition the way we've put it into place, or adjust or change. And that breaks down into three groups of things that we have responsibility for, right? First of all, the people, who we put into the different like, what roles do we have for starters? What roles do we need to make this happen? What types of people, profiles do we want to put into those roles? How many of those people do we want to put in the various places? And what are they going to cover? Accounts, territories, that type of thing. We want to look at the onboarding of those people. So if in our baselines, we're seeing that the ramp time is taking a lot longer than what we thought, onboarding programs might be a priority, for example. Otherwise, if we're just seeing, kind of low or plateauing productivity numbers, maybe enablement and getting people more productive is going to be a priority. Getting them ready, understanding the product, all of those things. Incentives, motivating them through, compensation, and incentives is definitely a part of it, and making sure that you've got, achievable quotas, that you have, people feel like they can make money at the company, and they'd be rewarded for doing well. The other thing we of course focus on sometimes, maybe a little too much sometimes, is the processes, but these are hugely important to make sure that, efficiency is there, that productivity can, be achieved through, easier, more understandable ways of doing things, maybe, understanding consistent methodologies of how to run a sales process, or how to think about the revenue cycle in your company, those types of things. So process initiatives should follow, again, what are we trying to solve for to make the best chance of achieving the plan? And, kind of wrap your initiatives and process around that. And then, of course, there's technology to help all of this. And I know we sometimes get, very distracted and excited by this shiny new object and all this AI stuff that's coming out nowadays. There's no shortage of cool tools out there for things. But, those are maybe not oftentimes the biggest needle movers, right? It might be some of the things around the people or the process that need to be kind of dealt with first. So anyway, it's different at every company, and it's up to you to kind of figure out and prioritize how to activate all of this in order to, again, have the best chance at achieving the plan. So, um, we've got time for questions, and I've seen the chat really kind of blowing up. So, I will go through and let's go through a couple of them here. I'm just going to scroll through. First question, and we've answered this kind of going along. We've had Alex kind of monitoring the chat too, but we might as well go through them as we have the time. Does time inefficiency formula mean sales cycle time? Just to understand that more clearly. Can you talk about the efficiency formula?
Yeah, so I think, efficiency again, many ways to, the term can mean different things to different people on how I think. And when we think about efficiency, there's two ways to it. One is just sales efficiency from a cost standpoint. So if you're looking at your return on investment, so, I was always guided, you need to get a 3 to 5x for every salesperson that you hire. So if they're going to cost you 200K, you expect 600K from them, and so forth. So generally, you want to sit within that. We see some organizations at 10 to 15x, sometimes 20x, depending on the deal sizes and their cost. So it very much ranges. So that's one piece from an efficiency standpoint, because how that plays into a plan is, if I need, let's just say, a 5x efficiency, well, then I need to produce a plan that's going to deliver 5x, which means I probably can't hire 10 salespeople. I need to hire 8 salespeople or 7 to hit that 5x return by the end. So that's the efficiency from a cost standpoint. Then you've also got efficiency that you just want to drive within the sales organization through strategic initiatives or whatever it might be. And generally, you would measure that through productivity. So if I'm delivering a 500K of productivity per salesperson per year, and I want to have them more efficient, well, then I'm going to expect 600K next year, because now they've got all this AI and they should deliver automatically an extra 100K in productivity. Now, that's just be cautious with that. That's not always easy to do, and it's not. You got to monitor that very quickly. So, I think be always cognizant of the efficiency gains that you want to bring in. So that's from a technology process and people standpoint. But then, yes, to the pipeline pieces, can we get more? Well, it's tied to what I've just mentioned. Can we get more efficient from the conversion rates? Can we increase conversion rates and improve them, so that it's faster to close a deal, for example? I get hit up, well, we all get hit up there at Lative from the VCs. Can we shorten the sales cycles and so forth? Or and if you're doing that, how do you do that? What's involved? So you got to think through all those processes and where you can gain efficiencies. I'll end off just saying that's why it's a big one, efficiency. Great question. Just be thoughtful about it, map it out, and decide what efficiency gains. Don't go try and do 10 efficiency gains. It's too much. Do things in threes, and always have an idea of what you expect the metric outcome to be from doing that, for that initiative or that efficiency gain you want to gain.
Great. Thank you. We're getting a lot of questions about quotas. So let's move over to the quota, the questions. The first one is, for sales quota, do we also need to analyze historical win rates by reps, region, and the ramp curve in the case of a new hire?
So I'm just trying to, so when you got a new hire coming in, there's two parts to it, right? A new hire is coming into the organization, they're going to ramp at a certain rate. So in month one, they're going to produce a certain amount. In month two, month three, month four, and so you go. So this is what we call tenured productivity. Um, for my thoughts on this, and my advice to this is that's what you need to track, because the conversion rates of the pipeline are going to be lumpy. They might have been given a book of business, or maybe they've been given a deal and saying they closed it. But if you look at it over a 2 or 3 year period, for every new hire that comes in, they're going to produce a certain amount of dollars in month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever it might be. When you average that out, it's going to give you what that a cumulative ramp curve should be. And that's how you base your ramped hires. Okay, well, now that's what I expect the dollars to be for them to come in. Then, yes, then you can then back into, okay, well, based on that and based on the conversion rates of what we see for the pipeline and so forth, you can then start to calculate that, even then to the activities that you expect them to then achieve, the number of calls or number of emails. But start with the cumulative ramp time for what you expect them to produce or what they are producing for every salesperson that comes in month 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 onwards.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we're getting a lot of questions. Just another one, and this kind of touches on that too, I think, from Stephen Busby. What's your view of the best way to set quotas? Do you lean towards prior year actual or market potential?
Yeah, so for me, two parts. You can look at the attainment of what you achieved last year, and again, there's many. You see, the problem with quotas and attainment, there's so many things that go on as how did you set the quotas? What happened? Were there changes? Were they not? So attainment, because it's just an unstable metric to work with. But you could look at that. The other big piece is look at the sales productivity. If a salesperson on average in the new business team in North America, or actually let's take the UK for this time, is producing 450 thousand pounds, well then I need to set quotas that are in and around, not say 450 because you've got to stretch the team, but you're not going to set them a million quota if you know they're only generating 450. So there should be a balance between the average production of a role and what that quota then is for that, of what you set the quota for. Now, of course, there is the board, there is the finance number that comes, and you've got to hit 10 million. And I've got 10 salespeople. Well, divide one by the other, and everyone's got a million quota effectively. But you should also be looking at the productive capacity. That's why that bottoms up piece is so important. And going back to finance and saying, hey, we can only produce 8 million right now based on current productivity levels and capacity, which means we've got a 2 million gap to solve for. So then the question becomes, how do we solve for that 2 million? What are we going to do in the engine to solve for that two? Do we need to hire more people? Do we need to increase spend somewhere else, or reduce something, or stop selling a specific product because we get a higher productivity from other products, or go into higher segments of customers? You can start to make those decisions. So great, yeah, again, great question from Steve, because that really does unwind into many factors that you need to think about.
Yeah, so I think that kind of also answers the question from Catherine here. How do you determine the year-over-year quota increments, if any, at the individual level, or is there a limit to how high they go?
Yeah, and I think it's also, the other big piece to that question is how have you set up your territory? Now, are you going by roles? And I've got, 5 people in this new business team. I've got 5 in this mid-market team or whatever it might be, and I'm setting a quota, or am I setting territories? And based on that book of business that person's got, I'm getting to their quotas, because they might have 100 accounts. You set targets for each of those accounts of what you expect them to achieve. So the book of business they then get is going to be the sum of those targets you've done by account, or the territory you've created. So you might have 40 salespeople or 20 salespeople, and you've got 20 territories, and you're going to expect a certain quota for each of those territories. So that's another way it can be done. Instead of doing it by role, you're doing it by individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And similarly, Max asked, does tenure productivity affect quota? So.
Yes. Well, I mean, you should be looking at it. It's for you to drive that, to say, hey, this is my tenured productivity. This is what we're producing at for any new hire that's come into the business. Or this is what our 1 to 2 year reps produce, or our 3 to 4 year reps produce. So if we know what that tenure productivity is, then you've got a good sense of what the production is going to be. So then that should then help back you into what the quotas need to be. A lot of the time, what we see is that tenure productivity is not being looked at. The capacity is not being looked at. When people are sometimes talking capacity, they mean quota capacity. And it's saying, well, I've rolled out 10 million in quota, and I'm assuming a 90% attainment. So I've got 9 million of capacity. That's not true. It's a very dangerous way to use net quota capacity as your sales capacity model. You need to look at productivity times headcount, your average production times your headcount, to give you sales capacity, to give you that true bottom up. And you'll probably find that's going to be lower than 9 million.
All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit. And this is one I've definitely encountered myself. In cases where we don't have enough data to support, in a startup company, or where we have a new territory we want to break in. What do you suggest for tips on quota setting in that particular territory? This is from
Yeah.
Julie. Yeah.
No, it's true. And yeah, it's true. It's startup. I mean, what you've seen today is the principles of planning. It applies if you're a startup or you're not. And you'll see in the document Stephanie's sending you all those downloadables that if you're a startup, there's still these pieces you need to go through. But when you are like you do need to put a stake in the ground. So I think there's what the opportunity is in front. What I tended to do in the past is sometimes I don't set an annual quota, set monthly quotas or set quarterly quotas. So it gives you the ability to adjust it. So put the stake in the ground. We expect 100K this quarter. See how you go. And then next quarter is going to be 120. But give yourself the flexibility to adjust the quotas. Don't always start with an annual quota. We actually got it to work at Citrix. So, there were a lot of salespeople, and we went to quarterly quotas. So yes, it was a lot of work, but we made it work, and you could adjust, and it just gives you that flexibility than just setting an annual quota.
I think that does it for most of our questions here. And so we've shared the resources, the readiness checklist, which has all the things that we've talked about today, including the definitions for all the different metrics that we talked about. We're going to give you the calendar and the RACI chart, and of course, please connect with us on LinkedIn. If you have other questions, if you want to chat one-on-one, we're here to support your planning cycle and help you make it run more smoothly. So
Yeah, that's true. And thanks, Stephanie. And I think it's true. I mean, at Lative, what we do, this is what our technology does and helps you. So this session was all about thought leadership. But if you want to, if you need some help with your planning pieces and you want to look at piece of technology, of course, we're happy to talk to you about that. But if not, please, we can always jump on a call if you got some questions, or we can help with your current planning processes. Stephanie and myself have done this for a long time. We've got a lot of experience, and happy to help you. We know this is hard.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining today. We really appreciate it. We're so thrilled at how many people joined us, and so clearly this is something top of mind for all of you. So looking forward to more conversations going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.